Hello, welcome to RCR's AI Tech Talk. I'm your host, Susana Schwartz, and today I'm talking to Crusoe Energy Systems, Pritesh Indore, Senior Construction Cost Estimator, and he does early feasibility studies, and he's at the forefront of planning, costing, and delivering construction at scale, estimating the cost of construction for AI projects across America. Welcome to the show, Pritesh.
Hello, Susana. Hello, everyone. My name is Pritesh Indore. I'm the Senior Preconstruction Estimator here at Crusoe. I lead end-to-end development of AI data centers from feasibility studies, strategy planning, to the full life cycle construction cost estimating.
So today we want to talk at first about power and utility strategy, and I used to write about traditional data center models, and it seems like with AI, especially AI factories and data centers for AI, that the model's being flipped where the data center operators are now looking to bring the data centers to the power rather than build first and then think about power later, especially in places where power is cheap or more abundant. So I wanted to see, in your opinion, are there any trends you're seeing in terms of, what stage of a project planning do the utility conversations begin? Is it pre-land acquisition or after? And what are some of the things that you're seeing right now from your point of view?
Yeah, for sure. Right now, in today's AI world, power is not a utility anymore. It has become strategic asset. And the developers who treat it that way are winning right now. The ones who treat power as a procurement line item, they are stuck in international interconnection queues of up to 8 years right now. So if you consider Northern Virginia, it was considered as the crown jewel for data center, over 300 facilities in Northern Virginia. But the PJM interconnection wait time in that particular region is now over 8 years. And currently the queue is up to 250 gigawatts, correct me, in Northern Virginia itself. So that's why the scale is shifting. For example, Project Stargate, that alone represents like 500 gigawatt of capacity that is moving to Texas, and almost 1.2 gigawatt capacity is already in operation right now. So all these new site selection methodologies, they are based on power availability, not on fiber proximity right now. So power has become a very important factor while planning today's AI data centers.
And what about the greenfield versus brownfield trade-off? Is Crusoe's strategy and your strategy, are you retrofitting brownfields, or are you looking to greenfield sites with abundant or wasted energy? What do you see there in terms of greenfield versus brownfield?
Yeah, like Greenfield usually gives you the blank canvas and every design decision, which sounds great until you realize blank canvases take time and money to prepare. And Brownfield gives you a head start, and you're not also inheriting someone else's decisions, problems, and someone else's liability. But the right answer is to get that brownfield and entirely make it deal specific. People see cheap land in rural areas and try to build a performa around the land cost. What they miss in this site enablement cost is it can be enormous. I'm talking about transmission line extension, substation construction, or upgrades, water and sewer infrastructure that doesn't exist in a rural greenfield road improvement required by the country as permitting conditions, fiber, there isn't enough fiber, stormwater decision systems, etc. I've seen site enablement add up from 30 million to 80 million to a project budget that wasn't modeled into early greenfield planning. That's a pre-construction failure. In terms of brownfield projects, the upside is very real. Existing power infrastructure is there, existing entitlements in some cases, and you can actually just do the retrofitting and do not deal with all these problems of power availability or entitlements or any laws or state specific regularities that are there. You already take someone else's envelope and fit in your AI compute inside it. So currently, brownfield projects are more and more in the market because everybody wants to deploy that capacity sooner than continue building from ground up. So we're seeing very balance between large scale AI factories as well as utilization of brownfield projects.
Yeah, just today I wrote about a 4.4 gigawatt project in Pennsylvania where they're retrofitting a past coal powered power plant that they are trying to make a 4.4 gigawatt facility out of. So are you think that, in terms of the obvious cost for things like land and GPUs, that the hidden costs that trip up traditional builders in data center projects are the ones you just talked about? They have to really consider the pros and cons of Greenfield versus brownfield, and there's enough existing infrastructure to retrofit, in your opinion, in the United States.
Yeah, and then as I said, the question is always the power, timeline, and cost. If a brownfield site has existing transmission infrastructure and a credible path to the megawatt that we need within our deployment window, it deserves like serious evaluation, even if the building has issues that we need to solve. And if greenfield sites are cheap, but the 4-year path to power, it doesn't matter how beautiful performer looks like how cheap your land is and what's the labor market. But if you're not getting power on time, that's not a driving factor. We also weight what I would call opportunity and originality for growth. Can we expand on a site over time? A brownfield in a dense industrial park with no room to grow is a one-phase asset. But a greenfield with like 500 acres and 20-year development roadmap, that long-term optionality has a real value that doesn't always show up in year one budget. So every greenfield and brownfield has their pros and cons.
Right.
Like if you're looking at like long-term gigawatt scale projects, you're obviously going to look up at like 500 acre lots and future roadmap of development of that particular region. And but if you want to deploy your capacity sooner than later, you always have to go brownfield projects in an industrial park where power is already available. All you need is to plan your rack density and then get the compute operational.
Right. And as the primary markets, like you were talking about Virginia before, as they fill up, or as projects, you talked about Texas, do you see secondary markets that are interesting to you that you think will, in the next year or 2 or 3, be particular interest as the primary markets fill up?
Yeah, as I said, like Texas, West Texas is a big market for data centers. There are like more and more data center sites coming across. Our company has Abilene in West Texas. A lot of companies recently in the news showed up in West Texas map. And if you talk about Project Stargate, along with Texas, there are data centers being constructed in Michigan as well as in Wisconsin. Up to 1 gigawatt in Wisconsin already planned, 1.4 in Michigan planned. And Ohio is still growing with like over 2 gigawatt of capacity planned for this year alone. So I would say West Texas, Michigan, Wisconsin are the new markets emerging in today's AI infrastructure world.
And what about the talent pool in those places? Are you seeing an expansion of or upskilling or retraining of people? Like, is there enough talent right now to keep up with the demand? Do you guys maybe have programs with like local trade schools or institutions, or how do you see the labor market taking shape?
Yeah. Like I would like to touch on like the 4 natural pillars of modern site selection. One being power, one being like land and logistics. Another one is state and policy. And then the 4th pillar of this construction of modern data center is your labor market, like skilled trade availability, union versus open shop labor market, prevailing wages requirements, proximity to workforce pipelines for construction and operation. These are the factors we take into consideration while selecting the sites. Labor always a key factor. Currently, there is a national shortage of electrician. And as Jensen Huang, the NVIDIA CEO, said, like next generation of millionaires will be the electricians and the plumbers. So, which is very true. Like we are seeing like there isn't enough manpower, and a lot of companies, a lot of developers are building these man camps in the remote regions and giving like very high incentives such as per diems and travel allowances and all the benefits to all these skilled laborers to go onto the site and build those data centers. So that's why I said like labor is one of the main pillars of modern construction of AI factories.
Yeah, you said there were 4 pillars. Can you name them again? Say them one more
The
time.
4 pillars, I would say power, obviously the first driving factor, state and local policy is being second, land and logistics is your third, and the labor is your 4th pillar.
Okay. And do you see in the market, I was reading today that maybe almost half of the data center projects proposed are getting pushback from communities and are being, there's proposals for moratoriums, and there's kind of a backlash or a lack of education about how these big projects can benefit local communities. Do you see a trend in improving communication and education to the communities in which these data centers will go to kind of improve that problem and maybe push back on some of the opposition?
Yeah. Right now, we are seeing the mix of both opposing as well as like there is a war between the states to bring data center to their states. For example, Mississippi, Wisconsin, Michigan, New Mexico, all are positioning as AI sovereignty hubs. Like they are turning their rural land into national strategic asset by building data centers in it. So there is actually a state incentive war going on, like tax breaks, workforce pipelines, fast track permitting, grid investments. Like the governors are using their power to give like tax breaks to all these developers, give like fast track permitting so that more and more developers are coming into their states to build the data centers. And they are also providing very ease of permitting for their grid investment, substation and infrastructure for to serve the large loads. So
Yeah.
we are not seeing the lot of pushback from the communities, but actually there is a very upside of this AI development is like all these rural areas, they are becoming the AI hubs. And if a data center comes to a rural town, automatically it grows the town. It brings a lot of investment in the town. And for
Mhm.
example, Abilene was like a very small town in West Texas. If you look at today, there is a daily flights between Abilene to Denver. The airport grew. There are over 50 hotels, and the overall economy of Abilene already boosted by exponentially over last 2 years. So the data centers are paving the way of future development across all these rural towns. So I don't see the lot of pushback. Yes, there were news about pushback in Northern Virginia because it was very congested market, and then land price was like going up. People were unable to buy the houses because the real estate prices went skyrocket high. You always find some pushback in those particular region. But
Mhm.
as all these large scale AI factories going into new locations and new state secondary market, the secondary market is actually welcoming those data centers for their own development.
Okay. And then in terms of, it's interesting to see these rural areas being developed because like, for example, I'm in rural New York where it's mostly farm country. So will there be a competition, you think, between like the large farms and or can they live in harmony? The farming communities that create a lot of receipts, like here we have dairy, cheese, a lot of dairy products because we have a lot of dairy farms. So do you see instances where they actually can live in harmony and the industry brings in enough money that it's actually helping to boost the economy, like you said, and it helps other industries as well, not just the data center, but it helps maybe parallel industries. Is there like a competition yet between farmers and data centers for land?
Yeah, so the core narrative here is like data center have an image problem, right? People think they are like mysterious black boxes that they take up their land, consume their water, and give
Right.
nothing. But in reality, especially at the scale that we are building, is very opposite. The facilities are often single largest private investment in a rural country that has ever seen. That
Right.
brings a lot of tax, a lot of public service, create a lot of jobs directly and indirectly as well. And then if the developers who build the best community relations, those are the ones who show up before they need something. And when the permitting and start, when we educate the people, like what we are bringing to the table, how we are improving the locality, that actually, when you tell your story thoroughly to the people, people always understand what you are bringing to the table and how you are contributing to their day-to-day life and how you are providing more opportunity that were not present there for a long period of time. So we're seeing like mix of like public pushback as well as welcoming by people, but it's very interesting.
Right. And
Yeah.
because the industry does change, like the technology changes so fast and, the dynamic nature of it, is there a greater emphasis on contingency budgets and recalibrating for AI facilities versus how it used to be done for conventional data centers?
Yeah, the chip companies are improving day by day. And like when we start the construction, we plan for particular deployment. And over the period of construction, they are evolving the new design for the chip, new processing facility. And then what we actually build is not sufficient for the integration of the updated technology. So we take that into consideration. We plan for that change. We plan and build our data center so that they have a adaptability for future changes if the technology changes. So we carry that contingency upfront so that over the period of time, whatever the technology development is happening, we'll be able to incorporate that as we keep on building all these big, large scale data center factories.
Okay. And are there long lead items beyond, the transformers that are creating like schedule risk right now that you would, like if you were to look at some of the long lead items, is there anything that comes to mind that's a little different now than in the past?
Yeah, like for this scale of data center, usually previously it was like 30, 50 megawatt of data centers. So 50 megawatt of data center require like that much cooling. But if you look at gigawatt scale factories, you need a lot of chillers, lot of cooling facilities. And currently the air cooled chillers are like one of the biggest challenge to procure. So the chillers and anything related to cooling of data center, it's kind of giving a very tight timeline on the schedule because cooling is not asset. It's always an expense on data center. And in order to get that done is always a challenge. And I think it's going to be a challenge for coming future as well.
So are the innovations with the liquid cooling and closed loop systems, is that going to help address some of that, do you think?
Yes. They're going to help these data centers coolings in a very positive way, but we don't exactly know when they're going to like clearly wipe out the air cooled chillers. So we still have to plan for if things go south with the liquid cool.
Okay. And then my last question would just be, in terms of the upcoming year, is there anything that excites you? Is there something that makes you feel like, wow, in the next 2 years that makes you feel excited for what's to come?
Yeah. So all these data centers traditionally ran on the interconnection of grid and substations. What excites me more is like the future, require a lot more computing capacity than we can imagine and how we can fulfill that demand by providing that much power to the data center. And this is something is very exciting to me to see all these different options of power, whether it's nuclear or data center in space, all of that. Like I'm very excited for that.
Right. And that is a question that I actually didn't really ask you is that, like the move to SMRs and the, bring your own power trend and, the amount of projects that are going on where instead of burdening the existing grid, a lot of the companies obviously are going to be building their own power and their own strategies. So
yeah, and that is something is very exciting for next year. So that is something I'm really looking forward to in coming year. And yeah, the next time we speak, there will be a lot more innovation in the industry and a lot more power infrastructure options available.
Right. Well, Pritesh, I want to thank you so much for talking to us today. And I hope to speak to you, like you said, as these things come to fruition. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you, Susana. Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, thank you.